we're going to recap a little bit on what Pastor Fahim is talking about. But my main topic today that I believe God gave me would be trust in the process. So we know we've been talking about kingdom. We've been talking about walking with God and, just all of the accusations and everything that's being presented to him about us and being in a courtroom and defending ourselves and, all of these things. But I feel that God is leading me to just tell us as a body that we have to trust the process. It seems as if, right, because we know that what everything looks like is not always so, but it seems as if that the people are falling away, right? So when you look around and you see where we came from to where we're going, it seems as if people are falling away from the kingdom, from the house, from, following God, right? And they're beginning to do their own thing. And this is what I'm going to say, it seems as if, right? Because we don't know. We don't know what anybody's going through, and we are not here to assume anything. We're here to pray for them in hopes that they stay strong in the faith. But from what it looks like, and, it seems as if the body is getting weak, right? It's losing all of its pillars and things to keep the body going. And it seems as if that although we're trying to continue to encourage and, hold the body together, that people are not in the receptive place of receiving God anymore like before, right? So we know that with the COVID and everything else, it seems that's when like the transition happened, just from what I see, right? And we know that the eye is a lie. So we're not going to say that what I'm seeing is actual factual. However, we all see that people are not as gung-ho as they was before when it comes to the things of God. So for those who are continuing to stand and continuing to fight and continuing to try to pursue after the things of God, he gave me, let's trust the process, right? So in trusting the process, we have to understand to be kingdom-minded, right? We have to be trustworthy, right? Not only God trusting us, but we have to trust him. So what we go through, because we're going to go through things. This is just a part of the walk. You have to go through something. Jesus went through it. He bared his cross. So we know we have to bear our cross, right, to get to the end purpose. But in bearing the cross, it seems as if everyone starts off running well, and then something begins to slow us down, right, because of what comes in front of us, right? So when we talk about kingdom mind, when we talk about the mind, we know Pastor Quanda, talked about the download, what we download in, our subconscious, right? So she talked about the download. So before I go there, I'm going to go to Philippians 2:5, because we're going to talk about the mind just a little bit. So you just flip the Philippians real quickly. 2:5. And we're only going to be here just for a little second. So it's like should have marked my Bible. So, Philippians 2:5 says, have this mind among yourselves, which is in yours in Christ Jesus. So when we talk about the mind, when you think of the mind, you're thinking of the brain, your thoughts, and from that aspect of it. But I'm not going to go there just yet. Let's talk about first trust. So in trust in the process, trust. To trust something is to have a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something or something. When we trust, when we get married, for most of us in here that's married, when we get married, we put our trust in our partner, right? That they're going to do us right. They're going to hold up their end of the bargain to what we agreed to at the altar. So we know that we put our trust. Now, some of us don't put 100% trust in our partner. Some of us get married and we don't give them that 100% trust. But we trust them enough to take them as our partner, right? God don't want that kind of trust from us. Because what happens is we come in, and this is where I'm going to go into the mind. We come in and we have the trust that we say we trust you in our hearts, and we have the trust of our thoughts, right? What we think is good at that moment. So we're going to talk about the heart. So you have your conscious. We know in the mind there's two minds, right? Well, I mean, you can call it two minds, but it's the conscious and it's the subconscious, right? So when we talk about the conscious part of the mind, it's having knowledge of something to be aware. That's the conscious part of it. It's responsible for rationalizing and logical thinking. This is the conscious part of your mind. So you logically think when you go into a relationship, and you know that it's going to be great. It's going to be, you make up this in your mind to how it's going to be, right? But it's never that way, right? But this is what you make up in your mind. You rationalize, I'm doing this because I love this person, and I'm doing this because he been with me forever, or she been with me forever, and you rationalize why you're making a good decision, right? God don't want that. He don't want you to rationalize it, right? And then you have the subconscious. And this is the part of the mind that is responsible for involuntary actions. When we talk about the subconscious, we are talking about the heart. So when people think subconscious, they think in the mind, that you think you got your conscious and your subconscious. But your subconscious is really that heart, right? So I'm explaining to you. So the heart, I'm going to the heart. In the Bible, the heart is cited 826 times in the Bible, right? So if we go to Hebrews, he talks about the discerning of the heart, right? But if we go to Proverbs, and this is Solomon's teaching. So if you go over to Proverbs, which you can turn to, Proverbs 23, and this is where we're going to get a little more understanding on the subconscious part. So we know the subconscious is the heart. And why do you say that, Prophetess Ben? So turn to Proverbs 23. And we're going to start at 7. So we know that in Proverbs, this is King Solomon, and he's writing this letter to his son, right? And he goes in multiple times about the heart, right? So in 23, verse 7, it says, for as he thinks in his what? In his heart. Whoever thought to think that the heart thinketh, right? Which tells you that the heart has some type of mind control, some type of control when it comes to the thoughts. As he thinks in his heart, right? So is he. This is your subconscious. When things happen to you, right, and your experiences, when you come out the womb and you begin to experience, and your subconscious begin to download things into that heart. So just because you're not saying it and you're not able to verbalize it at that point in your life, you are downloading in your heart, whether you believe it or not. It's known psychologically that by the age of 7, you have pretty much downloaded your character. By the age of 7. So from birth, when you come out, you begin to download what your mother is doing, what your dad is doing. When you cry and they respond, you're like, okay, this is what it takes to get what I want and get what I need. You are taken in from the time you come out of birth, right? So the subconscious is also your seat of reasoning. Think about the heart. Anytime you is presented with something or presented with a situation, It's those old experiences that play on your heart that determine your response. It's the old experiences, everything you've been through that you have stored in your heart that's going to determine your response. So when you're in church and you're in the body of Christ, right? You in church and you begin to experience things in church, right? You store it. You begin to store that in your heart. You come to a new body that's trying to teach you something, and when that thing triggers, that thing in that heart, that's what causes people to want to either up and leave or causes the conflict amongst the members in the church. Based off of what was stored in your heart. Your experience, it's not your mind, it's what was stored in your heart. Because at that point, you not technically rationalize it until it hit that heart. And that's what causes you to make an instant action. So when we talk about, I'm going to go back and I'm going to give you the definition of the subconscious. The subconscious part is responsible for involuntary actions. You're not sitting there rationalizing. And this is why I say don't make a decision when you're upset, right? Because you are moving off of the intents of that heart. You're moving off of your feelings, how you feel. And it's all coming from the heart of your experiences of what have happened to you in the past. So we're talking about the subconscious, conditioning. Conditioning is, psychologically, now you know I'm a behavior specialist, right? So it's a response that becomes more frequent or more predictable in any given environment. So that's conditioning. So what happens is as you're a child and you begin to walk in things and experience, and I'm going to connect this to the word to show you why it's so detrimental for you to change that heart before you can truly walk and trust in God, right? So it's those experiences you have begun to condition. So when you experience things, right, and it touches on your heart, and I'm going to say for those who may have got cheated on, right? Say you got cheated on. And somebody cheated on you the first time and it hurt you real bad. Then they cheat on you the second time. Then what you begin to do is that I'm not going to let that happen again. You begin to store this experience in your heart. So say you get the third person who is truly not cheating on you, but you begin to involuntarily react based off of what you have stored in that heart, in that subconscious. And you don't know why you're acting like that. And they may have not done anything to cause you to act like that, but you're acting like that. Your behavior began to come out involuntarily based off of your experience of your subconscious. What has been done in that heart? What does this have to do with church? This is what's happening in the body, right? We have all of these things stored up in our heart that it becomes hard for us to trust the leadership and the people that was placed ahead of us. So, trust in the process. Think about it. Moses, let's go back to Moses, right? When he was in Israel, Moses trusted God, right? He went, he did what God told him to do. The people begin to trust God and Moses, right? They followed them. They was like, oh, this is working. He touched the thing, the water opened. They're like, oh, you saved us, right? We could go to the scripture. But then what happened? When trials begin to hit, what did they do? You brought us here to die. They begin to lose trust in Moses. What is happening in the body? Members of the body is beginning to lose trust in the leaders because they feel like they're in a hard place. Why? Because of their subconscious, because of their experiences. They believe it's supposed to be one way when God, when you think in kingdom mind, when God is saying it's supposed to be, he's having it go this way to help you fulfill purpose. But we are moving out of our subconscious versus moving off of the mind of God. So this is what's happening in the body of Christ. So, sin. Sin has been conditioned in our hearts. When we were born in sin, shaped in iniquity. We have always responded in sinful ways, right? Our response has always been in sin. Why? Because we were born in sin, right? We were conditioned that way. We saw how our parents respond. We saw how people of the church respond. We saw how leaders treated the people of the church. And we begin to condition ourselves that we will not act that way, right? We will not be like that or allow that to happen to us, right? So we're conditioned in our heart by sin. How we respond, 9 out of 10 is not the godly way to respond to things. We respond based off of our heart and our experiences, right? So we're going to go real quick. Let's go to Exodus 14:11. Let's talk about Moses a little bit. Yeah, Exodus 14:11. So we want to be kingdom minded, right? So then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? See how the people begin to change? But what is causing this change? Situations. That was already in their heart, right? They wanted, a part of them, they wanted to be out of Egypt. They wanted to be free. But soon as an obstacle came, then their subconscious began to rise up. Their true heart began to rise up. Because now it's getting hard, and this is what I really feel. It would have been easier in Egypt. They didn't just begin to complain at that point in the Bible. We just don't know. This is a starting of complaining of the different tests that they had to go through. I'm sure when them horses start chasing them, before that water opened, it was people in that crowd complaining. It was people already complaining, right? Because they couldn't foresee what God was going to do. And this is where we are now. We don't foresee what he's going to do. So soon as a situation drop in our lap, we begin to complain like the people of Israel. But what happens is we begin to complain in our what? In our minds, right? So you begin to think it, because before you say it, you start thinking it. So you start thinking in my, oh my goodness, what we going to do? Oh my, this is not looking good. And then what also happens is we begin to connect with others who see how you see, right? Who feel how you feel. And then it's at that point where they raise up and they say it out loud. Now, oh, is this what you really brought us here to do? But it was the trials that they had to go through before they could make it through to the promised land. Trust the process. Trust the process, right? So this wasn't the start of their complaining. They already began to complain because it was already in their hearts. Leave us alone, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. What began to talk? Fear. Fear. But fear didn't come up in their conscious. That was in their subconscious. That was already there. Fear was already there. This is not something that just dropped on them. Fear was already there based off of what? Their experiences. Your experiences is what causes fear. Because when you experience something, you say, oh, okay, so if this happened, then normally this comes behind that based off your hurts and the stuff that was stored in your heart. That's what began to talk fear. But fear starts in the heart. It's not in the mind, it's in the heart. That's where it starts at. So, and Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation. When I taught on salvation last time, salvation is a what? Remember, Miki? It's a process. It's a process. It's not something you just get and that's it. You are constantly being built. It's a process, constantly going, right? So, and there's salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall not see again, no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. Our leaders are trying to push us forward, but we still thinking backwards, right? We still back. It would have been better if we were back here. It was better when we did it this way, right? But they are trying to push us forward and being able to trust and take the hand of God and walk in it, right? But if you can't, you wouldn't take somebody's hand to lead and guide you if you don't trust them, right or wrong. So you have to trust the process that comes with this. Let's go to didn't write it on here. We're going to go to Judges. Judges 6. Let's talk about another man to God that God called, Gideon. Judges 6:11. So, let me talk about the hard drive a little bit before I get to Gideon. So, sin has been conditioned in a man's heart. The hard drive stores the information. The moment we were born, we started to download with our mindset set at the age of 7. Out of the heart comes what? The issues of life. Out of the heart comes your issues. Why? Because that's your subconscious. That's what's controlling you, right? Involuntarily, right? So although you try to rationalize it in your conscious, it's your subconscious, that heart, that ends up winning, right? Disappointment is in the heart. Failure, defeat, your perception. Your perception is in your heart. It's difficult to retrieve new information that goes contrary to the heart. It's difficult for us or the ministers or anybody to preach to you and give you the word that's going contrary to their heart. Because what do we begin to do? Pick it apart, and then we begin to place it where we feel it fits, right? So it's difficult for us to do that. And this is why we have to have a transformation of the heart. So Gideon was another one who trusted God, right? He trusted him. He followed him. Even though it did not look like, because our eyes are lie, it did not look like what it was going to be, right? So let's read Gideon. Judges 6, verse 11. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his Gideon threshed wheat in his winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." Gideon said to him, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us?" Do that not sound like us? Why? If he's with me, why is all of this going on, right? And where are all his miracles, which our fathers told us about, saying, "Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites." So that sounds like doubt right there, right? So this is something that was in his heart. This is not something that he just came up with, because if he was thinking consciously, he would have thought about all the miracles that God have already done, right? But no, this is something in his subconscious that's just coming out, because out of the mouth, the what speaks? The heart speaks. So this was something that was already in his heart. The Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" Did you forget? Do we not forget, right? Because it's our subconscious talking, not our conscious. So he said to him, "Oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in the Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you." So this is where I said your perception. Your perception of who you are is in your subconscious. Who you are based off of what happened in your past. So this is why he said, "I'm the weakest. I'm this," right? Because he didn't truly trust in God, that God was his strength. That he wasn't, because if God saw him that way, he wouldn't have sent him. He wouldn't have chose him, the man of valor, right? So he said, "Oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest." So this is what he see. But this is not what God see of us, right? It's the weakest in the Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man." Then he said to him, "If now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign Now he want God to show him a sign because he truly did not trust him. He did not trust. This is why I say trust the process. It's a process. Show me a sign that it is you who talk to me. So now he have what? Doubt. This is his heart speaking. Doubt, right? Do not depart from here, I pray, until I come to you and bring out my offering and set it before you. And he said, I will wait until you come back. So Gideon went in and prepared the young goat and the unleavened bread from the ephah of flour. The meat he put in the basket, and he put the broth in the pot, and he brought them out to him under the terebinth tree and presented them. The angel of God said to him, take the meat and the unleavened bread and lay them on this rock and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened bread, and fire rose out of the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. And the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. Now Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord. So Gideon said, at last, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. Then the Lord said to him, peace be with you. Do not fear. You shall not die. So, when we are faced with a test and a trial, if we trust, have a firm belief, reliability, truth, that God's strength or ability is with us, we should not be fearing, right or wrong, right? But it's that subconscious. So Gideon built the altar there for the Lord and called it the Lord is Peace. To this day, it is still in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Now it came to pass the same night that the Lord said to him, take your father's young bull, the second bull of the 7-year-old, and tear down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it, and build the altar to the Lord your God on top of the rock in the proper arrangement, and take the second bull and offer the burnt sacrifice with the wood of the image which you shall cut down. So Gideon took 10 men from among his servants and did as the Lord had said to him. But because he, what? Feared. He feared his father's household and the men of the city too much to do it by day, he did it by night. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, there was an altar of Baal torn down, and the wooden image that was beside it was cut down. And the second bull was being offered on the altar which had been built. So they said to one another, who has done this thing? And when they had inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this. Then the men of the city said to Joash, bring out your son, that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it. But Joash said to all who stood against him, would you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down. Therefore on that day he called him Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal plead against him, because he has torn down his altar. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites, the people of the east, gathered together, and they crossed over and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. Then he blew the trumpet of the Abiezrites gathered behind him, and he sent messages throughout all Manasseh, who also gathered behind him. He also sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came to meet him. So Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I shall put a fleece of wool in the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel and by my hand. So my point to reading up to that is, although God had already showed them signs, that heart, he still had doubt. He still doubt. So what he was doing was he was saying, well, God, if you do this, then I'll believe you. God, if you do this, then I'll believe you. So, and God continued to show him that he was God, because truly he did not trust the process. But what caused that distrust with God? It's that heart. It's those experiences. It's those things. Because he knew what he thought he saw himself as versus what God saw himself as, right? So our perception, that's our subconscious. We have our perception of what people have said about us, our failures, our disappointments. This is what's causing us to move, right? And move outside of the will of God. We have to change our heart. So the heart, we know, is the subconscious. That's what moves you. Told you it's cited 826 times in the Bible. The Bible really don't talk about the brain more than he talks about the heart and the changing of the heart. When you go back to King Solomon touched on the heart multiple times in Proverbs. If you want to flip back to Proverbs real quick. Go to back to Proverbs 23. So he talked about in 7, for he that thinks in his heart, so is he. And then he says, eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. So you can eat the word, you can sit here and feast off of all the good teaching, but if your heart is not with you, it means with God, it means nothing, right? So the morsel you have eaten, which means that little bit that you have taken in of the word, you will vomit it up, you'll spit it up, because it don't agree with the subconscious of the heart. So if something is said over this word that's biblical and you don't agree with it because of your experience, because your heart, what you believe, your subconscious, that's your truth. And unless you change that, you're going to vomit it up. You're going to spit it up. That truth won't be able to lie in there with what your belief is, right? So it says, do not speak. Wait a minute. Go back. The morsel you have eaten, which means the little bit you have eaten, you will vomit up and waste your pleasant words. Waste the good words of God. Do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he would despise the wisdom of your words. Do not remove the ancient landmark, nor enter the fields of the fatherless. For the Redeemer is mighty, he will plead their cause against you. Apply your heart to instruction. It's not apply your mind, not apply your thoughts, it's apply your heart. Once you change your heart, that's what's going to lead and guide you. You have to apply your heart to the word of God for you to ultimately, truly change. Do you understand? So it's that heart. Go ahead, Terrell. It's not, I mean, you're supposed to meditate on the word, right? Because you're supposed to take in the word. The Bible says study to show thyself approved. So you're definitely supposed to meditate on the word. But as long as you're meditating on God, then absolutely. However, what I'm saying is what's in your heart, that if you do not change what's in that heart and those thoughts and those experiences get delivered from those things, then God's word won't be able to abide in there. It won't be any truth because you'll always follow the subconscious. Remember, the subconscious is responsible for involuntary, which means you're not sitting there consciously doing it, but you're responding based off of how you felt, right? So it's conditioned to respond this way. If this happened to me, if you slap me, I'm conditioned to slap you back, because that's how I was taught. That's what's embedded in me. That's what's in my heart. If you say something mean to me, I'm conditioned to say something mean back to you, right? You look at me, I'm conditioned to look at you back, because this is how I was trained up until this time. And this is why we have to be delivered, right, from this heart. That's your subconscious right there. It's not that you sitting there like thinking like, I'm going to look at her back. If you notice, it comes so fast that it's like, and you're like, well, and it's not until after that you're like, God, forgive me, because you really respond off an involuntary act. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. So you're going to act out what's in this heart. It don't necessarily mean just with your mouth, but It has a mind, absolutely.
Because if Jesus will say that, so that means that you're thinking from here, not here.
Absolutely.
You're thinking from your heart, not necessarily your brain. You know what I mean? So that's so full of whatever it is that's controlling. You're going to speak that instead of what, my wife always said, you probably need to think before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if my thoughts is coming from here, it's probably not going to come out the way, you know what I mean, it should. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what it is. The heart, that's your subconscious. That's your hard drive. That's where you stored the information and you're responding off of your heart. And this is why people are pulling away from the body. Why? Because they have their experiences, they have their thoughts, they have their feelings. All of this stuff is built up in the heart. And what happens is as time go on and trials go on, you see what's truly in the heart. So people say, I love you, I love you, I love you all day long, right? Until you make them mad, right? And then it's like, well, did they really love you? Or were they just saying words because it was good? Because it's really what's in the heart. If I truly love you in my heart, it's nothing you can do to separate me from you. Like, I truly love my mom. So regardless of what she does, it's nothing that can separate me from her. But that's true love because that's in my heart. But if I'm just speaking words, but I really don't feel that in my heart, the moment that you trigger me, then that's when you're going to get the response that's truly in my heart. You understand what I'm saying? So this is why it's the heart that has to be trained. Before you can truly walk with God and take God's hand, you have to truly trust that he's leading you and trust that, in your heart, not in your mind. Because a lot of times we come here, we think, the word sound good, it was great, but we don't embed that in our heart. And that's why we lose it and we begin to act out really how we feel, really what the heart feels. So this is where we have to trust the process. And a lot of times our experiences and the tests that God is allowing us to go through and the things we're going through is really to change their heart. It's not, people be like, why I'm going through this? Why I'm going through this? Because it's to change that heart. I know me and Tamika, we do this all the time at the daycare where we're constantly being accused of something. Now, we know the word say the devil's going to accuse, so we spit in Bible study back and forth to each other like, he's going to accuse us, but we got a father, that's the ultimate judge. However, we do get frustrated at times because although we're saying it, but then our actions be like, oh, here we go again, which means that we're not truly changed in our heart because our actions will show us something different. But then we try to speak it to try to change the heart to say, no, it's just God. It's God that's trying to change us. It's God. So we're trying to convince ourselves that it's really in our heart that we're really angry. We're really upset, that we really allowing these people, we feel we have to defend ourselves against these people. But God didn't call us to be defenders of the word. You know what I mean? We don't got to defend ourselves. Our job is to present love. And present the word through love, through God's love. So I always say, these parents, they come and they make up the craziest stuff. But we still got to show them love. I apologize. I'm sorry you feel that way. Although we may be right in our stance, but I apologize that you feel that way. Because at the end of the day, I have to leave my hands clean. But if I lead with my heart, which is desperately and deceitfully wicked, and who knows it but God, right? So if I lead with that, you're going to get deceit from me. You're going to get wickedness from me. So you give me wickedness, I'm going to give you that back. And I always say to her, these are unsaved people. Why do we expect something different from them? What they do is they pour out the unsaved in us. They really show us what's in our heart. Like, how can you proclaim to be saved and say you love these people and you're walking with God, you're supposed to be the example, but you acting like them? It don't add up. And I know this is more for me because I know, as I stand, you get tested. And you get tested on every level. And I'm like, whoa, I really feel I shouldn't feel this way. And I don't know why I feel this way because my experiences, and it's their subconscious. It's what's in my heart. And when Pastor Kwana said about the hard drive and downloading, we have our kids have downloaded these things. Sometimes they act like us, they downloaded all of this stuff and then you see yourself in them and then you angry at them, but this is what they downloaded. You know what I mean? So now we got to pray that God really transform this heart, because it's that subconscious that's hindering us from really being kingdom minded and walking with Christ and walking like Christians, walking with God. And this is where the devil is getting all his accusations from. That's that wicked heart, right? Because he presented him, although he said the devil, he is a liar, but he presents with truth. He's very, very wise at what he do. He present with truth. Yeah, he said that, but how is that true? But then he asks a question behind it. So he's going to present him what we have done. You see them? You see them people? You see what she just did right there? He's going to present that. That's true, I did that, but it's an awesome God behind that says that, God, I ask that you forgive me, that you cleanse me from that. He presented, even when Job went through his process, right? And God said, all he said was that he would never curse me. He would never curse. But he went through a process. And did doubt come in? Did fear come in? Absolutely. This man, his body was attacked. His children was taken away from him. But he still could not curse God. But what we do in our heart, we curse him. I know when my sister, when she lost her baby some years back, and it was like, well, why God do this to me? It's like, well, why not? Who you? Like, who you? This is your test for your purpose. Who are you? So you preferred to be on somebody else? Why he do it to you? Because you were selected. Job was selected. And we would say, that's a curse. Oh my goodness, I don't want to be selected for that. But you were selected. And that means if to be selected for something that great to have to go through, that means God see you as great. But remember, it's our perception. That's what's in our heart. How we perceive things is what we respond to. How we perceive things is literally why it's hard for us to remain steadfast in Christ. While we waver to and fro, because it's really our perception based off our experiences that's in our heart and that subconscious. So we have to change our heart. For us to be kingdom minded, stand on the word, we have to change our heart. That's what's speaking. It's speaking, and it's speaking loud, and it's taking us away from where God is calling us to. And it's a shame, because you do see it, and, looks as if the people are leaving, but I believe that God going to call them back, in hopes that, something's going to trigger that heart, trigger that thing to get them back in place. Because the body, although I said to Pastor Kwana when I was ministering to her after, and I said about the army. And I said, even if it's two people, because as Yolanda in the army, and Minister Cliff was, went the training to be a cop, which is still like a boot camp, right? Because you still got to be trained. Maybe not as extreme as the boot camp, but when you in it and it gets hard and you quit, then you're not fit for battle. You're not fit, because it's going to get hard. And that's the problem. Soon as people get in it and they quit, you get upset and you feel like, but they're not fit for the battle. And the worst thing to have is a person to get on the battlefield, get scared, and run off, and they're supposed to be blocking or protecting you, and your life get in the line of fire because they got scared and they ran and hid, right? So training, boot camp, all of that stuff is necessary. It changes the mind, but it also does something to the heart. It starts putting stuff in the heart to help you that when you get in a situation that you move unconsciously. You just automatically know what to do. You shouldn't have to sit there and say, should I run this way or should I run that way? It's something that you know immediately that when the stance go, that you go. And this is why it's important to be here. It's important to get the teachers. It's important to ask God to transform our heart, to remove all of those things that's really hindering us, that's causing us to move outside of the will of God. I know it's not only me. However, I'll take it. It's me, and I know that it's all this stuff in his heart that I'm constantly praying God to pluck it out and make in me a clean heart, that he can renew it, and that I can speak only what he say speak, and that I'm able to move literally without thinking. When somebody come in, I don't want to have to think, oh, should I have ministered to them? I want it to come so natural because he embodies my heart. He take over my heart. As soon as you come, I know exactly what to say because his spirit is there versus being there with all of her experience that, oh no, she might reject me. So I'm not going to say nothing to her. She looked more receptive, so I'll say something to her. But, you know, I don't like her attitude. But that's bitten. That's not God, right? And we are supposed to be the lights that shine in a dark world, and we can't do that with a dark heart. It's impossible. It's impossible. Anybody? Go ahead, Terrell.
Yeah, my problem is like once I like get like moving like even with the word like once I get to it then I want to do something else and I'm switching up. So I think like I move too quick. Like I have like something in my heart like I'll get like not kind of like word fast, but I move before I'm supposed to. Like I'll be doing something to work for me and I'm like, all right, well maybe I should do something else.
Yeah, well, the Bible say that God is not the author of confusion. He's not in confusion. So it sounds like you're a little confused. You're all over the place, right? And God don't want you to be all over the place. You have to first be stabilized in the word. That's the first thing. Once you stabilize in the word, then he can direct you. But he can't direct you with you moving, if you understand what I'm saying. You can't be the one that's directing your own path. He have to direct your path. So everything that God give us is fit for purpose, right? Everything we do is for purpose, of the fulfilling of purpose. But the problem is you're moving faster than before you even know what your purpose is, and that's causing you to be all over the place. God is not of confusion. So it says, I think it's like a confused man is unstable in all his ways or something like that. So a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, which is pretty much the same thing. That if you're confused and you all over the place, then it looks as if you're double-minded and it's causing you to be unstable. But God wants to stabilize you. Once he stabilizes you in the word, then you'll be able to be fit for use. But until you get stabilized, you're not fit for use. You get what I'm saying? And a part of all of us getting stabilized is first getting cleaning up this heart. You know what I mean? That's our first stabilization, because we become unstable and we seem to be bipolar when we speak one thing, but then we respond differently than what we speak. So that's where it comes. They say the bipolar spirit, you act in one way and then you doing something different than what you say. No, you have to be stabilized. So once you stabilized in the word, then he can use you for use, and then you'll be able to fulfill what your purpose is. But being all over the place is not, of